The deep space around the outer rim hummed with the quiet energy of the USS Endeavour as it moved through the darkness between stars. Commander Jake Martinez sat in his captain's chair, watching the starfield drift past on the main screen. His crew had been out here for 3 months, mapping new systems and checking for signs of intelligent life. It was routine work, but Jake never got tired of seeing what lay beyond the next jump point. Lieutenant Amanda Brooks stood at the navigation station, her fingers dancing across the control panel as she plotted their next course. She had been Jake's second in command for 2 years now, and he trusted her completely. Behind her, Tony Sullivan bent over the engineering console, making small adjustments to keep their systems running smoothly. The big man from Texas never seemed to stop working, always finding something that could run just a little better. Dr. Lisa Morgan sat at the medical station, reading through reports from their last planetary survey. She had joined the crew fresh out of medical school, eager to see what lay beyond Earth's solar system. Kevin Park monitored the communications array, listening for any signals that might indicate they were not alone in this part of space. The ship's routine was broken when Kevin suddenly straightened at his station. His headset crackled with an incoming transmission, but it was unlike anything he had ever heard before. The signal was weak and filled with static, but there was something desperate about it that made his skin crawl. "Commander," Kevin called out, his voice tense. "I'm picking up something strange. It's not human, and it's coming from the Zeta Reticuli system." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Put it through the main speakers." The bridge filled with a series of clicks, whistles, and what sounded like electronic screaming. The universal translator struggled to make sense of the alien language, producing fragments of words that made no sense together. But even through the broken translation, the emotion was clear: fear, desperation, a cry for help that transcended species barriers. "Can you clean that up?" Jake asked. Kevin's fingers flew over his controls, adjusting frequencies and boosting signal strength. Slowly, the alien voice became clearer, though still broken by static and translation errors. "Please, anyone, dying, children, help." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Jake felt his heart racing as he realized what they were hearing. This was first contact, but not the kind humanity had dreamed of. This was someone in trouble, someone who needed help. "Keep working on it," Jake ordered. "Amanda, set course for the source of that transmission." "Tony, I want full power to the communications array." As the Endeavour changed course, Kevin continued to work on the signal. After an hour, he managed to establish a clearer connection. The alien voice that came through was different from anything humans had ever heard, but the pain in it was universal. "My name is Veltar of the Villani people," the voice said through the struggling translator. "Our world burns with poison. Our children fall sick. The Krex Empire has come to take everything from us. We know of the Deathworlders who emerged from the killing planet called Earth. We beg for your help. We offer everything we have." Jake exchanged glances with his crew. Earth had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago, and most aliens still viewed humans with fear and suspicion. They called Earth a death world because of its harsh environment and the deadly creatures that lived there. Most species couldn't understand how anything intelligent could evolve on such a dangerous planet. "Commander," Amanda said quietly, "we're 3 days out from the Zeta Reticuli system. Should I maintain course?" Jake stood up and walked to the main screen, staring out at the stars. He had joined the space service to explore and make first contact with alien species, but he had never imagined it would be like this. Someone was asking for help, and they were asking humans specifically because of their reputation as survivors. "Veltar," Jake spoke into the communications system, hoping the translator would work both ways. "This is Commander Jake Martinez of the Earth vessel USS Endeavour. We have received your message. Can you tell us more about your situation?" The response came back quickly, as if the alien had been waiting by their communications system. "Commander Martinez, thank you for answering. The Krex Empire attacked our world 6 months ago. They do not conquer quickly. They poison our air and water slowly, making us weak. They take our people as slaves. Our military cannot fight them. We are peaceful farmers and builders. We have no weapons of war. Dr. Morgan looked up from her medical station. Commander, if they're being poisoned, there might be something we can do to help medically. Jake nodded. Veltar, we are coming to your system. It will take us 3 days to reach you. Can you hold out that long? We will try, Commander, but please hurry. Our children are dying. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Jake looked at each of his crew members in turn. They were just an exploration vessel with a crew of 30. They had no military weapons beyond basic defensive systems. But someone had asked for help, and they were the only humans in this part of space. Kevin, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have made contact with a species called the Villani who are under attack by something called the Krex Empire. Request immediate assistance. Already on it, Commander, Kevin replied. His fingers moving across his console, Jake walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. Amanda, push our engines as hard as you can. Tony, I want you to go through our supplies and see what we might have that could help with medical treatment or decontamination. Lisa, start researching what we know about alien biology and how different species might react to chemical weapons. As the crew jumped into action, Jake stared at the starfield on the main screen. Somewhere out there, an entire species was dying, and they had called on the Deathworlders for help. Humans had earned their reputation the hard way, surviving on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Now it was time to see if that reputation meant anything beyond Earth's atmosphere. The USS Endeavour pushed through space toward the Zeta Reticuli system, carrying a crew of 30 humans toward their first real test in the galaxy. They didn't know what they would find when they arrived, but they knew they couldn't turn away from someone asking for help. That wasn't what humans did. 3 days later, they would learn what it meant to be Deathworlders. The message from the USS Endeavour reached Earth Command 18 hours after Jake Martinez sent it. Admiral Patricia Kane sat in her office at the Luna Station headquarters, reading the report for the 3rd time. First contact with an alien species. Under attack by another alien empire was not something Earth had prepared for. The political implications alone made her head spin. Kane called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. Colonel Danny Wright from the Marine Corps' Captain Ryan, Foster from the Navy, and Lieutenant Colonel Maya Rodriguez from Intelligence gathered around the conference table. The holographic display showed the Zeta Reticuli system and the limited information they had about the Villani and their attackers. What do we know about this Krex Empire? Kane asked Rodriguez. The intelligence officer pulled up her files on the main screen. Very little, Admiral. We've heard whispers about them from some of the traitor species that visit Earth. They're described as a militaristic empire that conquers worlds through fear and intimidation. They don't seem to use traditional warfare tactics. Captain Foster leaned forward. Commander Martinez says they're poisoning the planet slowly. That sounds like psychological warfare designed to break the will of the defenders. Which means they're not used to fighting species that fight back hard, Colonel Wright added. Most of the aliens we've met so far are pretty peaceful. They probably expect their enemies to surrender when things get tough. Admiral Kane stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the lunar landscape. Earth hung in the black sky like a blue marble, beautiful and deadly. Every species they had met so far called it a death world because of its harsh environment and the creatures that live there. But that harsh environment had made humans strong. The Villani are asking for help specifically because we're Deathworlders. Kane said, they think we might be able to do something their own people can't. The question is whether we're ready for interstellar warfare. Rodriguez pulled up another file. Admiral, we've been analyzing the communications from the Villani. Their translator is primitive, but we're getting a better picture of what they're facing. The Krex don't just conquer planets. They break them psychologically first. They make the population watch their world die slowly. That's sick, Wright said, his face hard. They're torturing an entire species. Kane turned back to the group. How long would it take to get a proper fleet to the Zeta Reticuli system? Foster checked his tablet. At least a week, Admiral. Maybe longer if we want to bring enough firepower to make a difference. The Villani might not have a week, Kane said, but we can't send the Endeavor alone. They're explorers, not soldiers. Rodriguez stood up. Admiral, I'd like to volunteer to go out there ahead of the main fleet. I can take a fast courier ship and link up with Commander Martinez. If we're going to fight an enemy we don't understand, we need intelligence. Kane nodded. Do it. Take whatever equipment you need. Foster, I want you to start preparing the fleet. Use the Valiant as the flagship. Reich, get your Marines ready for planetary operations. We might need to fight on the ground. As the meeting broke up, Kane stayed behind to think. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for 5 years, but they had always been viewed with suspicion. Most alien species thought humans were too aggressive and unpredictable. Now someone was asking for help specifically because of those traits. 3 days later, the USS Endeavor dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zeta Reticuli system. Jake Martinez stood on the bridge, looking at the main screen in horror. The Villani homeworld hung in space like a sickly yellow ball. What should have been blue oceans and green continents was covered in a poisonous haze that made the entire planet look diseased. My God, Dr. Morgan whispered. What have they done to that world? Kevin Park's communication station came alive with incoming signals. Commander, I'm getting transmissions from the Villani surface. They're welcoming us, but they sound weak. Jake opened a channel. Veltar, this is Commander Martinez. We have arrived at your system. What is your current situation? The alien voice that came through the speakers was noticeably weaker than it had been 3 days ago. Commander Martinez, thank you for coming. The Krex fleet maintains a blockade around our world. They have 20 ships in orbit. Our people are dying faster now. The poison clouds are spreading. Tony Sullivan looked up from his engineering station. Commander, I'm reading massive energy signatures around the planet. Those aren't just ships up there. They're running some kind of atmospheric processors. Amanda Brooks checked her navigation readings. Commander, I'm detecting the Krex fleet. They're spread out in a loose formation around the planet. They don't seem to be worried about us. Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Krex were so confident in their victory that they didn't even bother to form a proper defense when a human ship appeared. They were treating the slow death of an entire world like it was routine. Veltar, we need to understand what we're dealing with. Can you tell us about Krex weapons and tactics? The Villani's response came slowly, as if speaking was becoming difficult. The Krex use fear, Commander. They make us watch our world die. They take our people and make the rest of us listen to their screams. Their weapons are designed to cause terror, not quick death. They want us to surrender and beg for mercy. Dr. Morgan was scanning the planet with her medical sensors. Commander, the atmospheric contamination is getting worse. At this rate, the Villani won't survive another month. Jake made his decision. Kevin, send a message to the Krex fleet. Tell them this is Commander Martinez of the Earth vessel USS Endeavor. We're here to provide humanitarian aid to the Villani people. The response came back quickly in heavily accented but clear English. Human vessel, this is War Leader Thax of the Krex Empire. You will leave this system immediately. The Villani are now property of the Krex Empire. Any interference will be met with destruction. Jake looked at his crew. They were 30 humans against 20 alien warships. Any reasonable person would retreat and wait for reinforcements. But the Villani were dying while they waited, and someone had to do something. War Leader Thax, Jake said into the communications system, this is Commander Martinez. We don't abandon people who ask for help. We're going to provide aid to the Villani whether you like it or not. The aliens' laughter came through the speakers like broken glass. Foolish Deathworlders, you think your reputation frightens us? We have conquered 100 worlds. We will add your ship to our collection and your crew to our slaves, Jake smiled grimly. You're welcome to try. War Leader Thax stared at the communication screen aboard his flagship, the Bone Crusher. The human ship was small and clearly built for exploration, not warfare. Its crew of 30 posed no threat to his fleet of 20 warships. Yet something about the human commander's calm response bothered him. Most species would have fled by now or begged for mercy. Shall I destroy them, war leader? Asked his second in command, a scarred veteran named Crix. Thax considered the question. The Crex Empire had built its reputation on fear and intimidation. Every species they had encountered eventually broke under the psychological pressure of watching their world die slowly. The humans were supposed to be different, but they were still just another species. No, Thax decided, let them come closer. I want them to see what happens to those who defy the Crex Empire. When they realize the futility of resistance, their surrender will be more satisfying. On the USS Endeavour, Jake Martinez was making his own calculations. His ship had basic defensive shields and a few mining lasers that could be used as weapons, but nothing that could seriously damage a warship. However, he had noticed something about the Crex formation that gave him an idea. Tony, can you boost power to our shields? Jake asked. The engineer nodded. I can give you about 30% more power, but it won't hold for long against military-grade weapons. It doesn't have to, Jake said. Amanda, plot a course directly through their formation. Take us right between those two ships on the left. Amanda looked at him with concern. Commander, that's suicide. They'll tear us apart? Trust me, Jake said. Kevin, open a channel to the Villani surface. Tell them to watch what happens next. The Endeavour began moving toward the Crex fleet at full speed. As they approached, the alien ships began to spread out, clearly expecting the humans to attack one of their vessels. Instead, Jake ordered Amanda to fly straight through the gap between two Crex ships. What are they doing? Crix asked as he watched the human ships approach. Thax was equally confused. They're not attacking. They're not retreating. What are these Deathworlders planning? The answer came when the Endeavour passed between the two Crex ships and headed straight for the planet's surface. The human ship dove through the poisonous atmosphere without hesitation, its shields glowing from the toxic gases that would have killed most alien crews instantly. They're flying through the poison clouds like they don't care. One of the Crex officers reported in disbelief on the Endeavour's bridge. Alarms were going off as the toxic atmosphere tested their shields. Dr. Morgan was monitoring the air quality inside the ship, ready to seal the compartments if the poison broke through. Shields holding at 60%, Tony reported. But this stuff is nasty. Any other species would be dead by now. Jake smiled grimly. That's the point. Kevin, are you recording this? Yes, sir, and I'm broadcasting it to the Crex fleet. As the Endeavour descended through the yellow clouds, Jake opened a channel to the Villani. Veltar, this is Commander Martinez. We're coming down to your surface. Direct us to your largest city. The relief in the alien's voice was clear. Commander, you're flying through the poison clouds. How is this possible? We're from Earth, Jake said simply. This is just another Tuesday for us. The Endeavour landed in the capital city of the Villani. Homeworld, setting down in a plaza surrounded by graceful towers that showed signs of decay from the poisonous atmosphere. Thousands of Villani gathered to see the human ship, their large eyes filled with hope for the first time in months. Jake and his crew put on environmental suits and stepped outside. The Villani were tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and gentle features. They moved slowly, clearly weakened by the poison in their air. Veltar approached them, supported by two other Villani. Commander Martinez, you came. We thought all hope was lost. We're here to help, Jake said. Dr. Morgan, start setting up medical stations. Tony, I want you to analyze this poison and see if we can neutralize it. As the human crew began working, more Villani gathered around them. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans moved freely through air that was slowly killing them. To the Villani, it was like watching gods walk among mortals. How do you survive in this poison? One young Villani asked Dr. Morgan. Earth is a harsh world, she explained while setting up her medical equipment. We've adapted to survive in conditions that would kill most species. This poison is dangerous, but not immediately fatal to us. Above them, the Crex fleet watched in growing confusion. The humans had done something no other species had ever attempted. They had landed on a world that was being slowly poisoned and were working to help the inhabitants. "War leader," Crick said, "our psychological warfare is ineffective against these Deathworlders. They don't seem to fear death." Thax was beginning to understand that humans were different from any species they had encountered. "Send down a strike team? If they won't be intimidated, we'll destroy them directly." The Krek's landing craft descended through the poison clouds, carrying 50 heavily armed soldiers. They landed near the human ship, expecting to find the crew dying from the toxic atmosphere. Instead, they found humans working calmly to help the Villani. Completely unaffected by the poison dot, the Krek soldiers were equipped with weapons designed to cause maximum fear and pain. They fired energy bolts that should have sent the humans running in terror. Instead, the humans took cover and began returning fire with their simple mining lasers. "These Deathworlders don't run," the Krek squad leader reported. "They're fighting back." What followed was unlike any battle the Kreks had ever experienced. The humans didn't retreat when wounded. They didn't surrender when outnumbered. They fought with a determination that the Kreks had never seen before. Jake and his crew held their ground in the plaza, using the Villani buildings for cover. The Krek's weapons were designed to terrorize, not to kill quickly, which gave the humans time to adapt to their tactics. "They're trying to scare us," Jake called out to his crew. "Don't let them get in your heads." The battle raged for 2 hours before the Kreks finally retreated to their ships. They had never encountered an enemy that simply refused to be afraid. The humans had turned their own weapons against them, and the psychological advantage the Kreks relied on was completely useless. As the alien soldiers fled, the Villani cheered. For the first time in months, they had seen their oppressors defeated. The Deathworlders had kept their promise. News of the human intervention spread through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. On trading stations and colony worlds, alien species whispered about the Deathworlders who had landed on a poisoned planet and fought back against the Kreks. Empire. Most couldn't believe it was true. The Kreks had been the nightmare of the galaxy for over 2 centuries, and no one had ever successfully resisted them. Lieutenant Colonel Maya Rodriguez arrived at the Zeta Reticuli system 3 days after the first battle. Her fast courier ship, the USS Swift, dropped out of hyperspace near the Endeavor's position on the planet's surface. She brought with her advanced communication equipment and detailed intelligence files on the Krex Empire. Jake Martinez met her at the landing site in the Villani capital. The city was slowly coming back to life as Tony Sullivan's engineering team worked to neutralize the poison in the atmosphere. The Villani moved with more energy than they had shown in months, and their large eyes sparkled with something that had been missing for too long: hope. "Commander Martinez," Rodriguez said as she stepped off her ship, "Admiral Kane sends her regards. The main fleet is 2 days behind me. What's the situation here?" Jake gestured toward the Krex ships orbiting overhead. "They're confused. Their usual tactics don't work on us, and they don't know what to do about it. They've been testing us with small attacks, but nothing major." Rodriguez nodded and pulled out a tablet. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns during the trip here. The Kreks aren't just militaristic. They're built around fear and domination. Every aspect of their society depends on being able to terrorize their enemies into submission, which means they've never dealt with anyone who fights back," Jake said. "Exactly, and that's their weakness. They don't know how to handle real resistance." Dr. Morgan joined them, carrying a medical scanner. "Colonel Rodriguez, I've been studying the poison they're using. It's not just designed to kill. It's meant to cause maximum psychological damage. The victims get sick slowly and painfully, which terrifies the survivors. Psychological warfare," Rodriguez confirmed. "They break the will of entire populations before they ever set foot on the ground. But it only works if the target species can be intimidated." Tony Sullivan approached from where he had been working on an atmospheric processor. "Commander, I've got good news. We can neutralize their poison, but it's going to take time. The bad news is that they've got 20 ships up there, and we've got 1 exploration vessel with mining lasers." Rodriguez smiled. "That's about to change. Admiral Kane is bringing the entire Third Fleet. Captain Foster is commanding the flagship. USS Valiant and Colonel Wright is bringing 2 companies of Marines. As if responding to her words, the Krex fleet above began moving into a tighter formation. War Leader Thax had finally received new orders from the Krex High Command. The Empire was taking the human threat seriously aboard the Bone Crusher. Thax studied the reports from the surface battle. His soldiers had retreated for the first time in his memory, driven back by a handful of humans who refused to be afraid. The High Command was sending reinforcements, but they were also demanding answers. War Leader, Krix said, the humans are different from any species we've encountered. They don't respond to fear the way others do. Thax turned to his tactical. Officer, what do we know about their homeworld? It's classified as a Class 12 death world, the officer replied. Extreme weather, poisonous atmosphere in some regions, and filled with predatory life forms. Most species consider it uninhabitable. So, they evolved in conditions that would kill most of us, Thax realized. That's why our psychological weapons don't work. They're already adapted to survive in nightmare conditions. The tactical officer nodded. The reports say their planet tried to kill them every day for millions of years. They developed technology and tactics specifically to survive in hostile environments. Thax felt something he had never experienced before, uncertainty. The Krex Empire had built its power on the assumption that all species would eventually break under psychological pressure. But what if there was a species that couldn't be broken? On the planet's surface, the Villani were experiencing their own transformation. Veltar worked alongside the human crew, learning how they operated in the poisonous atmosphere. The Villani scientist was amazed by human adaptability. Commander Martinez, Veltar said, your people move through our poisoned air like it's nothing. How do you stay so calm? Jake checked his environmental suit readings. Earth taught us that the universe is trying to kill us all the time. We learn to adapt and keep going. This poison is dangerous, but we've dealt with worse. What could be worse than having your entire world poisoned? Ever been in a thunderstorm where the lightning strikes every few seconds and the wind can throw trees around like toys? Jake asked. Or in a desert where the temperature reaches 50 degrees and there's no water for 100 kilometers? Earth has places that make this look easy. Veltar stared at him in amazement. Your world sounds like a nightmare. It made us strong, Jake said simply. And now we're here to help you get strong too. The conversation was interrupted by Kevin, Park's voice over the radio. Commander, I'm picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Something big is coming. Jake looked up at the sky where the Krex ships hung like dark clouds. Rodriguez, is that our fleet? The intelligence officer checked her equipment. No, sir. Admiral Kane is still 12 hours out. That's something else. Above them, War Leader Thax received the same readings. War Leader, his communications officer reported, the High Command is sending the Death Fleet, elite ships with our most experienced crews. Thax felt his confidence returning. The Death Fleet had never been defeated. They were equipped with the most advanced fear-inducing weapons the Krex had ever developed. If anyone could break these Deathworlders, it would be them. How long until they arrive? He asked. 6 hours, War Leader. Thax opened a channel to the human ship on the surface. Commander Martinez, this is War Leader Thax. You have impressed me with your courage, but courage alone will not save you. The Krex Death Fleet is coming. They have weapons that will make you beg for the mercy of a quick death. Jake's response came back immediately. War Leader Thax, this is Commander Martinez. We've been expecting reinforcements. The difference is ours are coming to help people, yours are coming to hurt them. We'll see which approach works better. As the two fleets prepared for the confrontation that would determine the fate of the Villani homeworld, word continued to spread throughout the galaxy. The Deathworlders had answered a call for help, and they were refusing to back down. Other repressed species began to whisper about the possibility that the age of Krex dominance might finally be ending. The human fleet arrived at the Zeta Reticuli system just as the Krex Death Fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the opposite side of the planet. Admiral Patricia Kane stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant, looking at the tactical display that showed both enemy formations. The Kreks had brought 30 of their most advanced warships, each one designed to inspire terror in their enemies. Captain Ryan Foster stood beside her, studying the enemy positions. "Admiral, they're trying to intimidate US with their formation. Look how they're arranged to maximize the psychological impact." Kane nodded. "Classic Kreks tactics. They want us to see how outnumbered we are and surrender before the fighting starts. They still don't understand what they're dealing with." On the USS Valiant's communication system, a new voice came through. It was deeper and more threatening than War Leader Thax's voice, filled with the confidence of someone who had never been defeated. "Human fleet, this is Death Commander Vex of the Kreks Death Fleet. You are outnumbered 3-1. Your small ships cannot stand against our advanced weapons. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Admiral Kane picked up the microphone and smiled. "Death Commander Vex, this is Admiral Patricia Kane of the Earth Fleet. We don't surrender to bullies. We're here because someone asked for help, and we don't abandon people who need us." The alien's laughter came through the speakers like grinding metal. "Foolish Deathworlders. You think your reputation means anything against the Death Fleet? We have destroyed entire civilizations. We will add your bones to the monuments of our victories." "You're welcome to try," Kane replied calmly. "On the planet surface, Jake Martinez and his crew watched as the two fleets faced each other in space. The Villani had gathered in the city square, looking up at the sky where their fate would be decided. Veltar stood beside Jake, his large eyes filled with worry. "Commander Martinez," the Villani said, "the Death Fleet has never been defeated. They destroyed the Zephyrian Empire in a single battle. Are your people strong enough to face them?" Jake looked up at the stars where the human ships hung in space like points of light. "Veltar, let me tell you something about humans. We don't give up, ever. When something tries to kill us, we find a way to kill it back. When someone asks for help, we answer. And when bullies threaten innocent people, we make them regret it." Above them, the battle began. The Kreks Death Fleet attacked first, using weapons designed to cause maximum terror. Their ships fired beams that created horrifying illusions and broadcast sounds that were meant to drive enemy crews insane with fear. Against any other species, these weapons would have been devastating. Against humans, they were just annoying. Captain Foster commanded the Valiant as it charged directly into the Kreks formation. The enemy's fear weapons washed over the human ships without effect. The crews had grown up on a planet where everything was trying to kill them. Scary sounds and illusions were nothing compared to the real dangers they had faced every day on Earth. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane," came the voice over the fleet communications. "Remember why we're here? The Villani are counting on us. Show these Kreks what happens when they pick on innocent people." The human ships moved with a coordination and aggression that the Kreks had never seen before. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, the human crews became more determined when attacked. They flew their ships in patterns that other species would consider suicidal, pressing attacks when any reasonable commander would retreat. Death Commander Vex watched in growing alarm as his terror weapons failed completely. "How are they resisting? Our fear inducers?" he demanded. His tactical officer was studying the readings from the human ships. "Death Commander, their crews show no signs of psychological breakdown. They're actually becoming more aggressive when we attack them." "Impossible. No species can resist the fear weapons of the Death Fleet." But the evidence was clear. The human ships were tearing through the Kreks formation like predators hunting prey. The USS Valiant rammed one Kreks vessel, its captain laughing over the communication system as he did it. Other human ships used tactics that defied military logic, turning desperate situations into victories through sheer determination. Colonel Danny Wright led his Marines in boarding actions against disabled Kreks ships. The alien crews expected to be tortured or killed, but the humans treated their prisoners with professional courtesy. This confused the Kreks more than any threat could have. "Why don't you torture us?" one captured Kreks officer asked Wright. The Marine colonel looked at him with genuine confusion. Why would we do that? You're prisoners of war. We have rules about how to treat prisoners, but we are your enemies. We tried to kill your people, yeah, and we stopped you. That's how war works. Now you're out of the fight, so there's no point in hurting you. The Krex officer stared at Wright in amazement. He had never encountered a species that showed mercy to defeated enemies. The psychological impact of human kindness was more devastating. To Krex morale than any weapon could have been, the battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Krex Death Fleet was scattered and broken. Death Commander Vex found himself aboard the USS Valiant as a prisoner, facing Admiral Kane across a conference table. This is impossible, Vex said, his voice shaking. The Death Fleet has never been defeated. How did you resist our weapons? Kane leaned back in her chair. Your weapons are designed to make people afraid. But humans learned a long time ago that being afraid doesn't help you survive. You can be afraid and still fight. You can be afraid and still help others. Fear is just another obstacle to overcome. But your planet, Vex said. The reports say it's a death world filled with monsters. It is, Kane confirmed. And we learned to live there anyway. We learned to work together, to help each other, and to never give up. That's what makes us human. As the human fleet secured the Zeta Reticuli system, word spread throughout the galaxy at the speed of light. The Krex Death Fleet had been defeated. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries had been broken by a species that refused to be afraid. On the Villani homeworld, the poison clouds were clearing. Tony Sullivan's atmospheric processors worked around the clock to clean the air, while Dr. Morgan treated the last of the poison victims. The Villani children played in the streets for the first time in months, their laughter echoing through the city. Jake Martinez stood in the city square, watching Veltar and his people celebrate their freedom. The Villani leader approached him with tears in his large eyes. Commander Martinez, how can we ever repay you? You saved our entire species. Jake smiled and put his hand on the alien's shoulder. You don't owe us anything, Veltar. Someone asked for help, and we answered. That's what friends do. As the celebration continued, Kevin Park's communication station came alive with new signals. Dozens of them from all across the galaxy. Other species who had heard about the human victory were sending their own desperate pleas for help. Jake looked at his crew and grinned. Looks like we're going to be busy. The age of unchallenged alien oppression was over. When the desperate called for help, the Deathworlders answered, and the galaxy would never be the same.